Just to reorient where the testimony was before break, we had just got done talking about a June of 2023 visit with you and your family to Carol Mitchell. What was the next time that you saw Carol Mitchell after the June visit?
I was trying to go monthly, so it would have been July, around the 4th of July.
Talk a little bit about that visit, please.
Same thing. I think that one might have also fallen on a Sunday, Monday. But basically on Sunday, we did the visit up to Nancy's, and then Carol came and joined us. More visits than not, she was getting lost on the way, so that was a concern, but otherwise the visit was very nice. And then the next day, the boys and I went up to Detroit Lakes and did a longer visit there.
Can you tell the jury about some of the things you did when you were in Detroit Lakes?
It was a busy visit. I didn't remember everything until I was going through my texts, but so I think the first thing was we raised monarch butterflies, and one was about to come out right as we were leaving on the trip, and so we couldn't just leave it. And Moorhead had just Moorhead had just done something that had killed a bunch of monarchs. So we don't want to. So I asked Carol if she had milkweed, and we actually released the monarch at her house. And then her friend Jim came over for a little bit to, I think, fix a light or something. And then her TV wasn't working, and so he started trying to fix the cables. And she'd mentioned it was the TV with a VCR thing, and the VCR or the DVD had gotten stuck. So I thought maybe like if that was the last thing she used, I looked at the input and she'd gotten it on the wrong input. So I reset her TV for her. And then she complained that she no longer had cable in the basement, which when they'd moved it from Dad's name to hers, the downstairs was kind of Dad's man cave, for lack of a better term. And so like the TV and the couch and everything down, that was kind of his space. So she told them she didn't need the cable. And then afterwards, she forgot she'd asked them not to have it. So then she was upset she didn't have cable down there. So I told her, we could get the cable back in the basement. But in the meantime, I'd given him a Roku stick a few years before. So it was back when you could share Netflix and stuff. And so I said, there's a Roku in the basement. I can show you how to pull up HGTV or something you like on it. And so we went down in the basement, and I took her through the steps, and she admitted she wasn't going to, it was two different clickers, and she admitted she wasn't going to remember it. And there was an old DVD in the basement, and she said she would like that reconnected. So I reconnected the DVD player for her so that she could do fitness videos downstairs, is what she said. So we did that. And then by the time I came back upstairs from getting that together, Jim had gone, which I was a little disappointed by because I didn't have his contact information. And I didn't want to ask him in front of her because I was afraid she'd get paranoid. We were like checking on her or conspire, I don't know. And I'd hoped to get his contact information. It was about time to go to lunch, and then we were going to go to a movie. So she could not find her purse to go to lunch. And I said, don't worry, I'll cover it all. But she was almost obsessed about finding the purse, which was usually hanging by the back door. So we were all looking around the house. I asked her if it would maybe be in her bedroom. She said she'd never put it in there. I said, well, you came from Nancy's, and then you came home last night. So, it's got to be one of the two places. It can't be lost. And then she told me she'd gone out to the bar after she'd come home from Nancy's, which was a little concerned because I felt like maybe her drinking had been increasing after the death. And then she said, I think she asked me to call them. And I said, describe the purse, and she was like, oh, I'm there a lot. They'll just know who I am. And so I called the bar, and they did not have the purse, and we kept looking. I went to look in the car for her, in the garage, and wasn't there. She finally did find it in the bedroom. Oh, sorry, the rest of the day.
No, no. Did you talk to Carol Mitchell about her Alzheimer's during that visit?
Oh, yes. So the rest of the visit was lunch, movie, and then we went to Dairy Queen. When we were at Dairy Queen, I had just been trying to ask her once in a while, like, have you thought about your plans for when we get a little bit further down the road? And that time she didn't want to seem to think about her plans. She kept saying, oh, my Alzheimer's is really mild. I just got diagnosed, even when it was starting to get farther back. And so I thought, well, maybe if I ask her about the cats. I said, okay, what would you like to happen to the cats when you can't take care of them? And she just said, oh, I'll be around long enough that won't be a problem. And I think I believe that was the extent of I think I said, well, remember, you're always welcome with us. She had a cat porch for the cat, and I said a friend of mine could even make a cat porch at our house. So if you ever need anything. By that point, I had checked some of the local places and knew that they had a long list, or a long waiting list. So, I just wanted to be thinking about it because getting on waiting lists and things like that.
After this visit, did you speak to anybody about the things that you saw with Carol Mitchell or experienced with Carol Mitchell?
So in general, obviously I was communicating with my two aunts a lot, and other family members. It was hard because I was grieving and my kids were grieving, and the stuff with Carol was a lot, and there was a lot of other stuff going on that year. So I talked to my family for support, occasionally some other friends going through similar things. I had talked to lawyers by that point about, like, if
So,
some,
Let me, I apologize
I
to interrupt, but if you would just slow down a little bit for the court reporter, and I'm going to direct you specifically to about any conversations you had with a man named Jay Brody.
yes, it relates a little to talking to the lawyers first, if I can. Okay, so when this is new to me, and it's not, elder law is like so different than anything I knew. And so I had talked to a couple lawyers about, like, if you start getting worried, a person isn't making those decisions on their own, but you're worried about what they're doing financially and maybe needing care, but they don't want it. Like what does this look like? What can you do, not do? I wanted to be really respectful of letting her have her autonomy as long as possible, but that balance of not letting it go too far. And even what should I be looking for and all those things. And so they had brought up guardianship and conservancy, but those felt like really extreme steps. Guardianship means you basically have full control over the person and you decide where they go, and conservancy is kind of the same thing. Someone completely takes over their finances, but like they can't touch their finances at all anymore. And it's a hard process to go through legally, and I didn't think we were there. And I had a friend in a colleague in the military who was going through kind of similar things with an adult daughter. He had a recently adult daughter with cystic fibrosis who was an adult, and so of course could make their own decisions, but would sometimes not take medication and would not take care to the point that she would end up hospitalized. And so we had a lot of conversations about like, what is that line? How do you respect them and not let them hurt themselves? How do you navigate all of that? And so after that, I think we kind of like bonded over that issue a little bit, going through different but similar things, and so we had conversations.
Your Aunt Nancy Lund testified a little bit about this yesterday, but there seemed to be quite a bit of traumatic events that happened to the Mitchell family in 2023, in addition to your dad's death. Can you talk about those and how those affected you?
It wasn't a good year. Right before the start of the year, I had to have my foot reconstructed because of military injuries. So I was on a non-weight-bearing cast. I couldn't even put my foot down. An aunt of mine had died from basically a fall, but then no one found her. Dad died in March. In the Senate, I loved my job, but it was, even the old timers said it was the craziest session ever. And there were nights we were there until, I think the record was 6 a.m., but it was just nonstop. The foster baby I had they were starting to work toward transitioning him back to his mother. He was the 6th kid. She'd never cared for any of her kids, and one had died in her care. And they were going to give him back to her. And I was scared for him, and I had to give back this child I had raised for 2 years to someone who had never stayed off drugs. And she would let me come visit him. And every time I went to the door, he would come running and screaming and say, "Home." All this stuff with trying to take care of Carol. My cousin, who was only 39, died of a lung issue that was a kind of an agonizing, not good thing. Nancy's ex-husband died, and it was I would call him my closest cousin, Tim, because our kids are the same age and they play together, and so we talk a lot. That found him still alive, but he died. And then one of my other aunts died at the end of the year. It was it was not a good year.
Can you talk a little bit more about how your aunt's ex-husband's death affected you? I think his name was Ron Lund.
Yeah. So, as I said, Ron, I think Nancy said, Nancy Lund, I believe, had said this, but so Ron Lund fell in his home, and I believe the kids had been trying to contact him, and then finally Tim went over to the house with his wife, and they found him alive, but I believe unconscious, and they don't know if he had been there for 1 or 2 days. And they got him to the hospital, but I think he died within a couple of days. Tim was understandably pretty shaken up, finding him in that condition. And the rest of us were shaken up too. And I know for sure Nancy and I had some conversations about being concerned about Carol. She also has some osteoporosis, so she would be someone that would be at risk for a bone break. There are steep stairs in the house. There were sometimes she'd text back right away, and then sometimes she wouldn't text for a couple days. And you knew she was probably okay, but sometimes your mind would go to the worst. It was just scary.
Was this the only time you experienced a loss of a relative in the same way as Ron Lund?
No, as I mentioned, so it technically wasn't in 2023, it was right after Christmas in 2022. But my aunt, I call her my aunt, she was technically my mom's cousin, but they were closer than her sisters were, so she, a few years before that, her son had moved her closer, but then he wasn't doing the best job actually checking on her, and I know other relatives would try to, but I believe she'd had a switch in medication, and they think maybe a reaction to that had made her fall or pass out. But a neighbor had been trying to get a hold of her, and the neighbor finally, I think they know that was on a Wednesday, and the neighbor finally talked the manager, or I think the last contact with her had been Wednesday morning, and then without a contact for a couple days, the neighbor got the manager to open the door on Friday. And same thing, she was, I think, unconscious. She lived a couple more weeks, but then there were just too many medical things and she passed.
Did the way that these two family members died affect your feelings about Carol Mitchell?
I'm probably just a worrier in general. And yeah, when you've seen bad things happen, especially like for my mom, I worry about my mom, but my stepdad's there. For Carol, she was on her own, and there were a lot of things going on, and it was really hard not to see things that were kind of the worst case scenario happen to other people and not think like that couldn't happen to this person too.
Do you remember the date that your father's ashes were interred?
March 19th of 2024.
Did you attend the interment?
I did not.
Were you invited to attend?
I was.
By whom?
Carol Mitchell.
Can you tell us a little bit more about why you didn't attend if you were invited?
So, about a week and a half before, with the anniversary of Dad's passing coming up, I knew it was going to be hard for all of us. And I wanted to make sure that Carol had support. But it was also going to be that same week at work where it was almost impossible for me to get away. I shouldn't say almost impossible. Like, if I wasn't there, things I'd been working on would not get done. That year, my biggest thing was I'd taken over a child protection task force, and we'd worked on a lot of things for hopefully to help kids. And there just wasn't any way I could be there that day. But the next week was Easter, the next week, the Friday was Good Friday, and then Easter was the Sunday. And the boys were going to be off, and so I believe I'd said something about, like, I can't get up that day because that year it fell on a Tuesday, but like, I could come up, the weekends or the next week. We would be in town, I would be the boys would be there too, and then we could all do a visit. And I don't remember if it was that conversation or a different one, but I'd also asked about the ashes, and at some point she had told me the ground was too frozen and that wasn't going to be until April.
So what happened once this conflict was identified? Conflict in schedule, right? You're not able to come up on the date that it's set. What happens?
So in the original conversation, the internment wasn't supposed to happen until April. And then, so the anniversary was on a Tuesday, and I believe it was Friday, she texts and says that it's going to happen on that Tuesday. And it would have been almost impossible for me to get off, but especially with only 2 business days of notice, there was just no way, because it wasn't just my schedule, it was like everyone's schedule that week. And so I know I said, like, well, that wasn't a day I could be available. Is there maybe another day we could do it? And I know that Friday was in my head because the boys would be off school, I would already be in town, like all the things. And I think she said that was the only day they could even do it. And that sounded weird, that would be the only day they could do it, and I thought she was confused. So I actually called the cemetery and the caretaker and said, just asking, are there other days available? I know it's Good Friday, would that day be available if it worked? He had said that day would actually work really well. So by that time, I was putting most of my stuff in writing to Carol, texts or letters.
So,
So it was a text.
and did you take screenshots of those text messages?
I did.
And did you provide those screenshots to your attorneys?
I did.
Your Honor, I'm going to be showing you what's been marked as Exhibits 243 through 271. There's a lot of those, Your Honor, so I don't want to read each of those numbers individually. 243 to 271. It'll be up on your screen, and this one, since there's so many, we'll try to have Mr. Keller help out sort of this batch production. So go ahead and let me know when we move them around. Oh, yeah, you should have been able to read them. Oh. We're waiting for it to go up to the. Yeah, we have requested it. It says, yep, request in progress.
No, it's just not showing on council screen.
Okay, now it should be up. I apologize. Our computer was not plugged in. Be ready to move.
I confirm.
Okay.
Confirm.
You've seen it? Okay.
I confirm. 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 I confirm.
Is that a complete and accurate representation of your conversation with Carol Mitchell on March 10th, 11th, and 15th of 2024?
Yes.
Have those screenshots ever been altered?
No.
Your Honor, I'd like to offer exhibits 243 to 271 into evidence and request permission to publish.
Mr. McDonald.
No objection.
All right, then exhibits 243 through 271 are received, and you may publish.
So, as you could tell, there are a lot of individual exhibits because of the way screenshots work. And so it's going to be a little clunky with the technology because we have to have two screens open to carry them all on the tabs. And so I also apologize that I had you testify a little bit about the content of this before. So please orient the jury about the colors, and then let's read these text messages, and we'll do our best to keep them in order.
So this is between myself and Carol Mitchell, and I am in green and she is in gray. And then start reading.
Yes, please.
The first is Sunday, March 10th.
And just, you don't, because there's going to be
Okay.
so many, let's not do the dates and times. We can just read them, please.
Okay. Which would have been 2024. Hello, I hope you're well and enjoying the sunshine. Last fall, when you went with me to that radio station, you pointed out the cemetery where you bought plots for you and Dad. With the anniversary of his death approaching, I was hoping I could get up in the next week or two and you could take me there. But we have legislative deadlines in 2 weeks and it's so busy, I'm even working on weekends. I was hoping maybe I could come with the boys March 29th when we're already on the way north for Easter. Visits Dad's grave, then maybe visit and lunch. We all miss you and the boys have asked about you. Much love. Oh, I'm sorry. I would think that would work out fine on March 29th. I do not have my calendar I think, the front of me as I am having breakfast buffet at the Holiday Inn at the moment. I may have to run another couple miles at the gym today. Just came from there to eat the buffet.
And let me just stop. Please make sure you indicate
I'm
that that's Carol Mitchell.
Sorry,
That's okay.
that was Carol. Me, that sounds delicious. We're going to the gym later too, but so the boys can play in the pool. Not as much workout for me, but lots of fun for them. Carol, the next day, March 11th. I called both Oak Grove Cemetery and Ness Granite Works, and they are telling me that it is most likely the ground is frozen enough that it will be April before everything is ready for the internment. Is that the right word? Well, anyway, the guy said he will call me when I can bring Rod's ashes out to him. Me. What a coincidence. I was just thinking about you as we have a testifier right now in my Human Services Committee who just drove in from DL. Carol, smiley face. Me, you told me about the cemetery, but I wasn't aware, I was aware Dad wasn't interned yet. Please keep me posted when that happens. Carol, I sure will. And I have a small amount of his ashes and a little gone fishing bobber for you. Me, oh great. Maybe we could still come by that Friday, March 29th, to visit his ashes or get the bobber and have a quick visit / lunch. Sam and Liam are getting into fishing. The bobber idea is lovely hearts. Carol, you can also take all or whatever you want of your father's fishing gear. The boys will grow into it maybe. They must have heard fishing stories from Grandpa. I believe that day is open. I will let you know soon. Me, wonderful. Friday, March 15th. Good morning. The Donauer Funeral Home called me and Rod's interment will be next Tuesday at Oak Grove Cemetery at 1 o'clock. I notified Cindy and she is letting everyone know. We can all meet at afterwards at the Holiday Inn if anyone wants for lunch or to gather, but not at my house. Me. Unfortunately, I cannot make that day. Next week is bill deadlines, and anything that doesn't get hearings will not pass this year. Some of the bills I have, worked on for 6+ months. Some include things like environmental protections and work for abused children. I would hate not to be there. But I'm also sure Dad wouldn't want me to abandon that important work.
And if you can, please just slow down a little bit. So that's okay.
I could get away from work the following week, and especially if it was March 29th, Sam and Liam could attend too. I'm sure he'd appreciate having his grandchildren there. Carol, I didn't get to make that choice, unfortunately. The funeral home decided it. I am so sorry you are so busy. I understand that is the job, but I can't change it. The only consolation I can think of is when you go to Moorhead for Easter, you can stop at the site and have a long conversation with him. I'm sure he is watching over you and the boys anyway. Hearts. Me? That's strange. I talked to the gentleman at the cemetery and he said Good Friday was available for the internment. Carol, if that's true, how many other people who already set their schedules would not be able to make it? I am really sorry, Nicole. Me? You just told me about this today. We were already planning on coming the 29th. I find it disappointing. It would be scheduled for a day that excluded Dad's only child and grandchildren, and I know he would be hurt we were excluded too. I guess I'm not sure who all these people are, whose schedules are more important than his child and grandchildren. Carol, I am so sorry, I am sorry, Nicole. You are not the only person with busy schedules. If you are really so concerned about being there for your father, you should be able to redo your own schedule. My heart is still breaking over the loss of the love of my life, and I do not appreciate your continued disdain of me. Me, it's true I'm not the only person with a busy schedule, but I am his only child. I do not have disdain for you. We have tried very hard to keep a relationship with you, but it is a two-way street. I can't imagine anyone cutting off someone's only child from something like this. He loved us too, and we're hurting and want to honor him too. This should have been something the two most important people in his life coordinated, not planned at a time you knew I was unavailable. He'd be very hurt you're treating us like this. Carol, I am treating you like this, and the cemetery called me and said the 19th was available, and being that it was the anniversary of the day he passed, I thought that was good. I think Rod would be disappointed you are still treating me with the same disdain you always have. You've never grown past it. Rod and I talked about it many times through the years. He always apologized for it. And again, I would like to add, I did not choose that day. Doan Hauer called and said the ground was thawed enough and they would be putting the urn in on the 19th. And he said we could have a little gathering if we liked. I was not making decisions without you. He was trying to help me in my grief. I'm very sorry of your grief of losing your father, but obviously you don't give a damn about mine. I am used to your disdain of me. Carol, I called the cemetery. They said you chose the day, and any day would have been available. You planned a ceremony without including his child or grandchildren. It's not unreasonable. I would be upset you excluded us. And Dad repeatedly apologized to me for your behavior too. I was 4 when you met me. I wanted a mother figure. You always treated me like an annoyance instead. I kept trying to act like the bigger person, especially when Sam was born, to make sure he had a relationship with both grandparents. You've even ignored him. You couldn't even send him a damn birthday card. So yes, Dad would be horrified. You've excluded us again and again. Her, OMG, it's amazing to see how different we see the past. But I suppose most people do this. Have you ever sent me a birthday card? We only have Rod for connection, and now he's gone. I guess there's nothing left. I love that wonderful man more than anything in the world. I would not let go of it, but I do not have to continue to live with your personal judgment. I will hold on to the love. What I can do is let you know when the gravestone is set up. I'll mail you the bobber. You can set up your own viewing if you like and invite your relatives. My relatives and friends will be with me on the 19th.
We can unpublish, Your Honor. And did these text messages occur 1 month before the incident in question in this case?
Yes.
What was the main thing upsetting you from that text exchange and during that time?
There'd been so much stuff over the past year. I didn't want to upset her because she would get agitated and I felt like I just kept shoving down my emotions to not rock the boat. When she was giving away Dad's stuff without telling us so that we could even look at it. Times we would set up a visit and there was one time I drove all the way up and forgot about it. And she didn't show up and we were worried. And then when we finally tracked her down, because she thought it was lost again, she'd forgotten and just had gone somewhere else for the day. And I'd done a whole trip for no reason. Just constant stuff. And I kept trying to she was struggling and I didn't say anything but that was the one thing that it was so hard because we loved him too. And the people that were coming were going to be, I could guess who it was going to be, and it was probably a couple other retirees who could have come any day. And it seemed like she wasn't going to change it because she was more concerned about a couple of her friends than us actually being able to be there. And I feel badly that some of my hurt clearly came out because I usually just tried, like Nancy said yesterday, when she'd say hurtful things. I mean, there was still a lot of loving stuff, but more of that sort of stuff was leaking out. And that one time I was just so hurt that I kind of stood up for myself, but probably not in the best way.
How much contact did you have with Carol Mitchell after this fight about the interment until April 22nd, the night of the incident that is at issue here?
She texted me a couple times, like a couple days later. I never contacted her again. I was feeling so emotionally beat up by that point. And there was so much other stuff going on. And I just couldn't keep doing it. And I needed a break.
During that month where you were not communicating anymore with Carol Mitchell, were you doing anything related to your concerns about her?
I mean, I was hurt and I needed a break, but I was still also really worried. Because even that, like, she was so confused. She said, they were picking the date and it wasn't her date and there were another, like, it was just, and I don't know that she would have done that outside of the Alzheimer's. So I was worried. Separately, there is a little bit of a lull in April with work and until the end of the month, and then things pick back up again. So I think around Easter break, I was way behind on cleaning stuff out of the house. and I started going through some stuff, and it included a couple old laptops that I was trying to figure out how to recycle or do whatever with, and to include one that Carol had given me.
And before we talk about that laptop, did you do anything else or look anything else up online or make any phone calls related to options that you were looking into for Carol Mitchell?
I mean, I'd done a lot over time. Talked to lawyers, I'd pulled up, in the fall once, I'd pulled up, there's a thing on driver's license so that you can ask to have a family member checked. And they can do things like say, they can't drive past a certain distance. So like they know their town and they can drive there, but not, farther away where they might get lost. I'd pulled that up and almost did it. And then she got a new car with the GPS and I was hoping that would help. I know at one point I looked up the Detroit Lakes Police Department to see if there was a social worker, because my town has a social worker, but they didn't. Again, I think that was a lot to do with concern with like getting lost, to see if there was a way to, I don't know how to say it, kind of keep an eye out. I don't know the exact timing of everything.
You've testified that you're a state senator. Why not call Becker County and sort of lean on them and, say, I need help with my stepmother, and sort of, say your name and try to get that done?
I don't think that works how people think it works. I mean, I've literally called, I don't usually do that for stuff for myself. I just feel weird about using my position for personal things. But even when I'm doing it for constituents, the last time I called my county for something for a constituent, and I know the people in my county, I still got bounced around for an hour to try and saying my name and title to find the answer I needed for something social services related. I know kind of some of the social services places tend to have, and at least my impression is more of the stuff for seniors is a little bit more like if there's food insecurity, housing insecurity, like, I don't know that the services would fit. And the final reason is in today's political climate, I honestly don't think, like, I wouldn't want to do it anyway, but the political climate can be pretty bad, and you don't know if you're going to get worse treatment if you say, you're a politician. So I can't imagine that would help anything.
When you were reading those text messages, Carol Mitchell mentioned something about giving you a small bobber with some of your father's ashes. Did she actually follow through with that?
She did.
Your Honor, may we approach?
You may talk about this case with anyone, including yourselves, and do not talk at all to anyone involved in it. Do not read about this case in the newspapers or listen to news about it on radio, television, social media, or the internet. Do not talk about any of the people or any subject involved in the case with anyone. Do not share information about the case in writing, by email, by telephone, on the internet, or by any other means of communication. You must not email, blog, tweet, text, or post anything to Facebook, Twitter, X, or other social networking sites about this trial, and do not visit any chat rooms to discuss this case. Again, leave your notepad just turned upside down on your chair there. Have a good lunch, ladies and gentlemen. All rise for the jury.